Today's podcast is brought to you by Gallagher, a global leader in insurance and risk management, providing businesses and individuals with the confidence to move forward. As a community insurance broker and a trusted local consultant in Greater Jacksonville, Gallagher has grown its business by working with people and organizations who share its common values and vision. When you work with Gallagher, you have access to resources and the knowledge of a worldwide leader with nearly 100 years of insurance innovation. Managing risk with customized solutions, a full spectrum of services, helping clients foster a thriving workforce, and always holding ourselves to the highest standards of ethics. That's the Gallagher way. Whether you're looking to protect your businesses, your employees, or your future, Gallagher has the expertise and the solutions you need. Visit ajg.com to learn more about Gallagher's approach to comprehensive insurance, risk management, and employee benefit solutions. Gallagher, helping you face every challenge with confidence. You know that feeling when you walk into a space and immediately think, oh yeah, this is special. That's the River Club in downtown Jacksonville. Perched 35 floors above the city, the River Club has always been iconic, but now, after an incredible renovation, it's next level. Think sleek, modern design, fresh energy, and views that are absolutely unmatched. Whether you're meeting clients, catching up with friends, or just sneaking away for a cocktail, it's the kind of place that turns ordinary moments into memorable ones. And speaking of cocktails, the bar program is on point. Expertly crafted drinks, a wine list that impresses, and a dining experience that blends Southern hospitality with elevated flavors. It's more than a private club. It's where business meets lifestyle and where Jacksonville shows off its best self. Learn more or schedule a tour at jacksriverclub.com. Trust me, once you see the view, you'll never look at the city the same way again. Here we are. I mean, I can't believe it. It's been a really important deal for us to make sure we can get more information out to the community, just having unfiltered conversations about all the great things happening in Jacksonville. So welcome, man. I'm excited to do this with you.
Yeah, this is a milestone moment for us. We've been talking about this for months now, planning it, dreaming about it, and here it is.
Yep.
First ever Speakeasy Jacks.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Episode. So, yeah.
So what'd you do this weekend?
Well, I hung out a little bit with a couple of my daughters and went to dinner, worked out a little bit.
Right.
So kind of a normal weekend, nothing out of the ordinary.
Right.
But what is out of the ordinary is this cold weather that we're experiencing.
I am not made for cold weather, bro.
Me
I'm telling
either.
you, I got hot pockets in my pocket. I'm sitting on them.
Yeah, that's why we live in Florida, right?
Jeez.
We don't want to experience snow anymore. We had enough of that in college.
Enough of that.
Up in Wisconsin. I do not miss those days.
No. That's something I don't understand, but I'm glad I live in Florida. That's for sure.
So I was thinking about what's been happening over the last couple of weeks leading up to this. Not only just the meetings that we had, talking about the production, what it's going to look like. And by the way, shout out to Manifest Distilling for allowing us to have the show here for the first several episodes. So we're grateful to them.
I love Manifest because they're always there for the chamber, always working hard to try to be part of the community, and it just means so much. It's an awesome location.
Well, and speaking of Manifest in this weather, you were telling me something earlier today about how this impacts the distilling part of what they do.
In Kentucky, it's obviously like the best place to distill bourbon, and the cold and the heat makes the bourbon come out better in the oak barrels. And so today being cold, I guess it's a good day for Manifest to get some of that cold and heat to make sure they make the bourbon taste a little bit better. So we got a great person to talk to today.
We do.
I'm pretty excited about it.
It kind of reminded me of some of the times that we had, growing up playing football together. A lot of the memories we have on the field, and attached to just watching football, hanging out, watching games, and having our own team to cheer for in Jacksonville has been a huge thing for the last many years. So.
Sports have been incredibly important, and obviously the guest we have today, sports is very important to him too. Yeah. But learning how to be a team member, learning how to give your all, dedicate your time to be better. I mean, all of that is a life lesson that I'm pretty excited about to talk today to our guest.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about that. So do you remember where you were when you heard that Jacksonville was going to receive an NFL team?
I can't remember exactly where I was, but I can remember the time of my life. It was, early in my college years. And I can remember being so excited about the fact that Jacksonville was going to have an NFL franchise, that we were going to have our own team to cheer for. Not that I didn't enjoy cheering for the Dolphins or the Buccaneers,
right.
But to have our own team right here in Jacksonville was a huge thing, huge milestone.
I remember exactly where I was.
Okay.
And we were surrounded by a bunch of Green Bay fans.
Ugh.
And the first thing that they said, Davis, did you hear you got an NFL team in Jacksonville? And I was like, are you kidding? Because we knew that it was possible, but unlikely.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I'll never forget where I was because I was so excited about Jacksonville being on the map.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool that the first Speakeasy Jacks, we have someone who's basically the leader in Jacksonville when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm super excited about it. I think you're going to have a great time getting to know Mark Lamping, the president of the Jaguars, and just having a conversation, talking about how he grew up, what it was like in his career. And I'm telling you, I think a lot of people in Jacksonville are going to appreciate the conversation. Yeah. So without further ado, why don't we invite Mark Lamping up, the president of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hey, Mark. How's it going, man? Great to see you. Yep. Hey, Mark.
Great to see you again. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's great to be around such younger men, and obviously you are years and years ahead of him because he was saying, well, I'm not 52.
Right,
exactly.
I'm only 51.
Right,
so.
Right. No, it's super exciting to have you with us today, just having a conversation. And I know you have so much going on, and for you to take an hour out of your life to hang out with us, and I think a lot of people in Jacksonville will say the same thing, but we really appreciate the time. And we just want to hear about you.
No, I appreciate, what you both do. Your not only your love for Jacksonville, but your service to the community, which continues to this day through all the great work you do through the chamber, and anything we can do collectively to make this already wonderful city that we're blessed to live in even a little bit better. We're happy to do.
Well, you've proven that. I mean, over the years, just partnering with the Jags Chamber. And partnering with the people in the community and really just showing the fact that you do care about the community, it's evident. So your actions speak much louder than your words. Yeah. So let's get started with the conversation. And I think people in Jacksonville, they hear about you, they read your name in the newspaper, they see you on the news, but I'm not sure they know the real Mark Lamping. I've had a chance to hang out with you a little bit off camera and with the families a little bit. And I think we would love to just hear your story. Where did it start? Where were you born, and what was it like in your household when you were growing up?
I'll get right that. But first, the only reason people care is because I'm the president of the Jaguars, and I was given that great privilege because of the opportunity provided to me by Shad Khan and the Cotton family. So, if there's one thing I am, I'm pretty self-aware.
Yeah.
And so I was born and raised in St. Louis. Middle-class family. Didn't have everything, but didn't miss anything really. I was one of eight.
One of eight.
One of eight.
So what was the distribution
Catholic?
like? Was it like how many brothers, how many sisters?
4 boys.
Okay.
4 girls. I was the third youngest, so I was near the end. My father was a carpenter.
Wow.
My mom was a mother during the day, and then she would, work at a restaurant in the evenings to help make ends meet. And grew up in a large Catholic family in St. Louis, which is very unusual. That's most of not unusual. That's most of the families in St. Louis.
What was the household like? Was it chaotic? Was it orderly? Like what? You got that many people trying to go through their daily schedule and routine. I just wonder what that was like.
Well, in retrospect, it was crazy.
Yeah.
At the time, it seemed absolutely normal, So, and there was a pretty wide age distribution, 25 years or so from youngest to oldest. So everybody was pretty spread out and going through. Young kids have one set of needs.
Yeah.
Teenagers have a different set of needs, and no, it was a wonderful home experience. Like I said, when you have 8 children, particularly as you get near the end of those 8, you're not exactly keeping as close an eye on them as you did the first. So, if the pacifier falls out, you're boiling it for the first, and if it's the 8th one, you're lucky you even wipe it up before you
and they're
stick it back
stronger
in
for
their
the
mouth.
dirt off the floor.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Rebecca, my wife, who you had a chance to get to know a little bit, she's one of 7. I didn't know if you knew that, but each one of the kids in her house had a color, and her color was green. And so every one of the socks that they had or underwear, whatever it was, her mom would stitch a different color. And that way everybody knew when the laundry was done, grab your color and take it to your room and fold it. Or if you had a day, like every day of the week, one of the kids had their day, and they could ride up front with mom in the car and the station wagon. Everybody else was in the back. So her mom was she was a drill sergeant.
You almost have to have a system when you have that many, people in one household. So what was it like with dinner time? Everybody trying to, go after the food and make sure that they got enough and that type of thing.
It was probably organized chaos. It wasn't the traditional Norman Rockefeller sit around, the expansive dinner table, right? And it was a lot of quick dinners with some people. All my brothers and sisters, to certain degrees, were either athletes or involved in activities. And if you've had kids, you know that it's hard to have that set dinner time between school and homework and practices and things like that. So, weekends were more for the organized dinners.
Right.
Dinners during the week was, pretty much grab what you can.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by it because I'm an only child, or was an only child. And so I didn't grow up with siblings, but I know, Daniel, you had some brothers and a sister. And just even going to Daniel's family gatherings now, like I got to go to their Christmas brunch this year. There were 50 people, it seems like, with all the cousins and grandchildren. And all.
Cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
So I missed out on that opportunity, so I'm always fascinated to hear how that works.
I think it definitely, defines who you are, and especially a middle child. I was the youngest, so it was kind of like you mentioned, by the time the last kid comes along, they basically got a free ride. And my brothers were always, it was very strict, and by the time I got there, they were mad because I got to do whatever I wanted to do.
And he got whatever he wanted. So I met Daniel when I was in the 8th grade. We were in middle school together, and his siblings called him the golden child. Like he got whatever he wanted. His parents just let him do whatever he wanted. So I know that's hard for you to believe, but
So looking at your bio, pretty impressive. What you've had the opportunity to be involved with, and I didn't know if you could just tell us a little bit about your path of where you started and how you ended up with the Jags.
Well, I've been incredibly fortunate throughout my career. There's no question about that. I always tell younger people that, you're going to meet people as you go through life. And, some of those people you meet are going to be the ones that may well change your life. We always point to our spouses and things like that. But the other part of that is sometimes you'll meet somebody and you don't know that they changed your life until retrospectively. And I guess that's why I tell people how important it is to always be nice to people.
Exactly.
And that particular person in my life, my professional life, was a soccer coach. I met him when I was early in high school, and played for this select team in St. Louis. And one of the coaches was a gentleman by the name of Denny Long, who, unfortunately just passed away in the past few months. And he happened to be the president of Anheuser-Busch Entertainment at the time. Anheuser-Busch Entertainment was the theme parks and things like Busch Gardens and properties like that. So he took a liking to me, and when I went to college, he helped me get summer jobs. When I was at school, I was the Budweiser rep on campus. So
that wasn't a bad job.
That was a good job.
Yeah, I think you had a lot of friends.
That was a good job. Yeah. And then coming out of school, I had a nice job offer from Anheuser-Busch, and talked to Mr. Long about it, Denny, and he said, "No, I don't think you want to take that job. I think what you really should do is you should go back to business school, get your MBA, and I think that'll serve you better." And so, I did that, and ended up getting a better job at Anheuser-Busch, and my career went exceedingly well there, but for meeting this gentleman who cared about young men and women, I never would have had that series of opportunities. So I went to work at Anheuser-Busch, started in an executive development type program. My background was finance and accounting, but I always wanted to evolve into the sales and marketing side of Anheuser-Busch, and had a job there, had a series of promotions, and ultimately, after a number of years, found myself as the group director of sports marketing. So I was in charge of all of Anheuser-Busch's sports marketing activities in the United States and
so did you go to all the events? I mean, were you?
I did, yeah. The first year I was there, and keep in mind, I mean, down here you'd be familiar with Anheuser-Busch's involvement with NASCAR as an example. So, and most of the big sporting events are on weekends. So, the first year I was in that position, I think I traveled 42 weekends that year, which makes it tough on on the family, and so I was really fortunate to get that job. And then when I was in that job, somebody reached out to me. I was really happy, and I had a great job, and reached out and said, I think there might be a good opportunity for you, if you're interested in leaving Anheuser-Busch. And hadn't really thought about it. My wife and I are both from St. Louis, and we were committed to staying there until our kids were out of college. And this job, ultimately, they would move the office to St. Louis, and for a short amount of time, I became a commissioner of the Continental Basketball Association. I mean, it was only about 7 or 8 months, so it doesn't generally show up on my resume. Right. I actually only have one basketball that says Mark Lamping Commissioner on it.
What was it? The Tropics? The
Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
Were they in the league?
I think that was made up, but that was more like the ABA. The CBA was populated by a lot of teams in the upper Midwest and things like that. But it was actually affiliated with the NBA. And that's where NBA teams would get players on what they used to call 10-day contracts. Yeah, so if you had a player who was injured, you go down, you bring a player up, you can keep him for 10 days. And one of the things I did when I left Anheuser-Busch before taking this job is I left on really good terms. And I tell people that too. I said, you're leaving a job, you think you were treated unfairly, you leave and you burn some bridges, and you feel good about it for about 2 or 3 days. And ultimately you're going to wonder, why did I leave that way? Yeah. I mean, why did I do that? And so I didn't leave that way. I left on really good terms. And then lo and behold, 7 months later, I get a call from Anheuser-Busch saying, would you be interested in coming back as president of the St. Louis Cardinals?
Wow.
So I was 30.
What did you think whenever you...
I said, it's a prank call. There's no way. I was 36 years old at the time. And I've said this before, is that, you grew up in St. Louis. You're a Cardinal fan. Right. I mentioned earlier, the Catholic upbringing. If you're a young man in St. Louis, your mother has like 2 wishes. Right. One, become a Catholic priest, and if that doesn't work, get a job at Anheuser-Busch. Right. Okay, because it was a great company to work for. So I was invited to come. I was invited to come back, and there's a whole nother story behind that, which was shocking.
Well, you got to tell it if you're gonna.
The reason I got it was this was in 1994, and it was the baseball strike in 1994. Right. Traditionally, the president of the St. Louis Cardinals, Anheuser-Busch owned the Cardinals, was the retiring head labor attorney. And it was a bit of a ceremonial position that,
Right.
hey, look, in return for you fighting the Teamsters so effectively for the last 30 years, the last 2 or 3 years of your career, we're going to put you in a rocking chair and be president of the St. Louis Cardinals. And that was the tradition of the president of the St. Louis Cardinals. But the strike came along. Anheuser-Busch, August Busch III at the time, a gentleman by the name of Jerry Ritter, also concluded that, look, we're going to have to do things differently at the Cardinals because we're going to come out of the strike really weak. And we're going to have to win back baseball fans. And we're probably going to need somebody that has more of a sales and marketing
Right.
expertise. And I was a known quantity.
Yeah.
I had worked there. I was well respected when I worked there. Left on good terms. So they thought, well, you know what? Maybe Mark would want to come back from the CBA, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it's like I've said before, for a kid with my background from St. Louis, that's too big of a job to even dream about
Yeah,
getting.
it's jackpot. Yeah.
And Mark, you were married at the time. Had how many kids?
We had 3.
Okay,
Yeah, and still have 3.
gotcha.
And now those 3 have 8 children of their own. So we have 8
There you
grandchildren.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Yeah. But it was it was an unbelievable opportunity for someone who grew up in St. Louis.
At 36, that's what I did not. I was looking at the resume and just like blown away by all the things that you've had a chance to do. But that is pretty big for you're not even hitting 40 yet. That's
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Like I said, I was incredibly fortunate. And it was circumstances, the baseball strike, the fact that I was well known to Anheuser-Busch. I think even to a certain extent, the fact that I left.
Yeah.
Typically Anheuser-Busch type of company, if you leave, you're gone forever.
Yeah.
And as I left, I assumed I'd be gone forever. But maybe they thought, maybe this person does have some independent thoughts and left on the absolute best terms. So I was there. 2 years later, I said, oh, now I figured it out. They announced they're going to sell the team. I said, they brought me back just so I would be out of a job when they sold the team.
Right.
But a gentleman by the name of Bill DeWitt had partners, the owner to today, and I stayed for another 12 years with the Cardinals, with the DeWitt family, and had an unbelievable experience there.
So just a pause. When we were in St. Louis a couple years back with the Jags Chamber leadership trip, you brought Ozzie Smith in to meet with our group. What was he like when you interacted with him? Because I remember watching him as a kid, and he was the big star.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe I got a chance to meet him.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, I mean, when I was a Cardinal fan, so let's see. Ozzie Smith was on the Cardinals when they won the World Series in 1982. I was, 22 years old.
Right.
I just sort of started my career. So I knew Ozzie in the same way you sort of knew him as this extremely charismatic, talented baseball player. And then one day, all of a sudden, I'm his boss's boss's boss.
It's crazy.
But it's funny you mentioned Ozzie, and that's why I have a good relationship to him. When I joined the Cardinals, he was winding down in his career, and there were a few people that I talked as soon as I got the job that I talked to. One of them was Ozzie. I asked Ozzie if he would come in and just share with me, what his thoughts were, where the team was through a player's view. That wasn't real popular with the manager at the time, that I had reached directly out to a player, but I didn't understand the protocol back then. I mean, I came from an environment where, if you work for an organization, you should be able to talk to every single employee in the organization. In fact, that's probably the only way you're going to learn. But yeah, he was unbelievably talented player and a really good guy. So, had a great run with the Cardinals. Really enjoyed, what happened near the last 5 or 6 years of my career when we went through the whole process of dealing with a stadium issue in St. Louis. St. Louis had a major stadium issue. They had an old stadium that was reaching the end of its useful life. Excuse me if this sounds familiar.
Right.
And then we had to figure out a way, how were we going to be able to replace that old stadium with a new stadium in a way that makes sense for the team and for the community, that then puts the team in a position where they can be, financially stable for generations to come. So we did that in St. Louis. We built the new Busch Stadium and master planned some of the mixed use development outside of that called a Ballpark Village. And I really enjoyed that process. In 2006, the first year the stadium opened, Cardinals won the World Series. So it was like a perfect ending to a perfect year. And about that time, I was a couple years away from being a year younger than you. I was 48 or so. And what comes with being 48, and Cheryl and I got married when we were, both 21, and we had 3 children. The last child, Tim, was born before Cheryl turned 30. So our kids were getting older. And I had always had an interest in spending some time in New York.
Yeah.
Because I'd been in and out of New York throughout my career at Anheuser-Busch. I was really entrenched in sports at that point. New York is sort of
the Mecca.
The Mecca of sports. And then, at the right time, which was when our youngest son, Tim, was getting ready to go off to college, we had wrapped up the stadium project in St. Louis. I was preparing to commit to another contract with the Cardinals, and it struck me as, what, if I'm about to turn 50, if I commit to another 5 years, that might be, might be the last job I'll have, and I'll just stay there until it's over. And that scared me a little bit, quite honest with you. And so out of the blue, I was approached about an opportunity in New York related to the development of the stadium that the Giants and the Jets share today, MetLife Stadium. Came at the right time.
Yeah.
Gave me an opportunity to get to New York. Thank goodness my wife was supportive of the concept, would not have gone if she wasn't. Again, left the Cardinals on the best of terms. In fact, when I left, Bill DeWitt said, look, if you don't like it up there, just come right back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, went to New York. Cheryl and I, now we're now.
Did you live downtown in New York City?
We
or
did.
Right
we lived in the city around 64th and Broadway, which is right across from Lincoln Center and about a block west of Central Park.
Okay.
So a nice area. We lived there for the first year we were there. And then, my wife missed some of the things that you enjoy when you're in a more suburban environment. She loves to play tennis. It was hard to get into the tennis scene in New York City. So we moved out into a suburb in the Summit, New Jersey area. And it was great. So we spent our last 3 years there. So, that was a great project. I got to understand, how the National Football League works. And then near the end of that, I'd come to be there for 5 years. I was there 4 years. We had finished the stadium. Stadium was up and running. I wasn't going to, stay just to run the stadium.
Right.
So I knew there was something else. And out of the blue, I got a call from an attorney that I worked with up in New York. Said, would you be interested in making a trip down to Jacksonville to talk to the new owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Shad Khan?
Wow.
And I had never met Shad.
Right.
I had heard of him, and I followed him very closely because of my deep roots in St. Louis, and he was on a path to buy the St. Louis Rams.
Right.
So, and during that time period, and Shad spent a lot of time in due diligence on purchasing the Rams, only at the very last minute for Stan Kroenke to exercise his right to match an offer. But Shad was doing work in terms of, okay, I'm going to need somebody here day to day on the business side, just like he needed to do here. And at the time, somebody had suggested to him, there's this Mark Lamping who was here for a long time. He's from St. Louis, just went to New York. Maybe he'd be interested in coming back. It's such a small world. That person was Jim Woodcock, who you've met.
Okay.
And I've known Jim forever, but I never got connected with Shad. So then I had the opportunity to come down and see him.
What was it like with the first time you met him? When you first walked in the room? He seems like such a. I know him through conversations, but you're probably the most knowledgeable, closest person to Shad in Jacksonville. And it'd be interesting for the citizens.
I'm probably amongst them. I don't know that I'm the closest, but there's the first impression of Shad, which is the mustache and the way he looks and the hair, and then there is Shad the person, who is the incredibly attentive, incredibly smart, pays very close attention to everything you say.
Right.
Focuses on the conversation, engages you in the conversation, is incredibly curious about you as a person.
Yes.
And, that was my first impression. I said, boy, this guy really cares,
Yeah.
and some of the best bosses I had some of those qualities. None of them had all of them.
Right.
Okay. I said, boy, this is really an interesting situation, on top of the fact that it's in the state of Florida.
Right.
If you grew up in the Midwest like me, you sort of aspire as you get older to find your way to Florida, and to actually find your way to Florida and have a real job.
Yeah.
That's really hitting the jackpot.
Yeah, you did.
I can tell you this,
Question.
Mark. We went to college in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and so I always look forward to
4
getting
years.
back, getting back to Florida.
The most brutal
Yeah,
weather.
that was some weather that I've never experienced before, but it was definitely nice to get back. So I can understand your thoughts when it comes to
So
that.
I met Chad. We had, the Cardinals had spring training in the Jupiter, Florida area.
Mhm.
So we had a place down there, and even when we were in New York, my wife Cheryl would go down to Florida. Then I would, in fact, she would be the only one who reported about 6 weeks ahead of the pitchers and catchers.
Yeah, she's
So,
enjoying it.
And I would commute back and forth on weekends. So when I was asked to come and meet Shad, it was actually on a Friday. So instead of flying down to the Jupiter area, I flew into Jacksonville. Cheryl drove up. Spent I think about 3 hours with Shad, and then we spent the weekend, Friday night and Saturday night, because neither one of us had been to Jacksonville. We'd been to Amelia Island.
Right.
What
What was your first impression of Jacksonville back then?
Incredibly large. I thought the traffic was bad because now I know the traffic's not as bad, because we were actually staying out in Ponte Vedra, and the car that I got to take me took Atlantic to get to Ponte Vedra. It's like, boy, this is taking forever. Oh, here's the beach. No, we got another 20 minutes. We have to go
Rookie.
south. But then we stayed around the beach. Actually stayed at the Inn and Club that weekend just to get a sense for it. Got up in the morning, went for a walk. Our place in Jupiter at that point was in a development, a golf development. A lot of people from the Northeast lived there. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'd be walking in that neighborhood, and people would drive by, and people would in their golf carts, and 1 out of 10 you'd even get an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were actually staying at the lodge. We come out of the lodge, we make a right, walking up the Inn and Club. Here comes this peloton of about 20 bikers.
Right.
Literally every one of them said hello. Hey, how you doing? It's like
That's Jacksonville.
that's 2 months worth of hellos at Parasol.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that was one of our very early impressions, and then you get to know. We loved Amelia Island, and then we literally saw this has all of the natural resources that Amelia Island has. It's very close. It's just bigger, and it has more things to do, and and we really liked the idea that it was a 12-month-a-year community, and not a community that's going to be really busy during the cold months and then empty during the summer.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Mike Amarata with Resource Solutions Plus, where bold ideas meet precision execution. We don't just create merch, we elevate your brand. From creative design to streamlined fulfillment, we will handle it all. You get high-quality screen printing, embroidery, customized packaging, and direct-to-film printing using the latest technology right here in Jacksonville. We bring speed, style, and service to every order. Ready to level up your brand? Visit rsppromo.com and let's get started.
I was just out at One Ocean this morning. They're doing a major remodel, makeover. And I know Shad has made a big investment right across the street. And they brought in someone from New Jersey to do all of the study of the history of the sea turtle and One Ocean, and how they can kind of get it back to what the community sees it. And the first thing she said was, I've never seen a community like Jacksonville, where I feel like everybody really, at the grocery store, people talk to me. I've never had that before. And I love that about Jacksonville.
Well, part of that is, unlike you guys, half of us that are fortunate enough to live here, we're not born in the state of Florida. So many people that live in this community at one point in their stay here has been the new person that was worried about, am I going to meet people?
Right.
Am I going to be able to get involved in the community? And I think that's one of the things. It's not only the people that are born and raised here who are naturally very friendly, But those of us that have made our way here, we're thinking about what we went through when we moved here, and the transition here is incredibly easy because of the quality of the people.
Yeah. Well, so you've had a chance to meet Shad, and you won the job, which we're so thankful for. You've had an incredible run, but I think one of the top issues that we all had to face as a community, we recently dealt with, and I would tell you, I watched a lot of stadium conversations taking place across the country, and then I watch how you and Mayor Deegan worked through this process and how you involved the community. And it seemed like I know it wasn't easy, but from the outside, it kind of seemed like, man, that was pretty easy. Can you talk us through that and just let's talk a little bit about what that new stadium is going to mean for?
Yeah, I mean, I've used this analogy. Others have used them. Like, if you look out on a pond and you see a duck and you see a duck just slowly gliding across the water, that looks very peaceful and easy. What you don't see is what that duck is doing beneath the surface that's making all that possible.
Yeah.
And, maybe some of it is the benefit of experience. Yeah. This is not the first time that I've dealt with controversial subjects. I've been successful with some of them, and I've been unsuccessful in some of them. Yeah. And, I think I learned a lot through that process. I learned a lot through some of our earlier engagements with the city, particularly the Lot J project. Learned a lot about that. One thing that we did know, and it goes back from the very beginning with Shad, is that, one of the things Shad really wanted us to do at the very start with him as an active participant is, what are those things we have to do to make sure that we have a NFL football here for generations to come, a successful, financially stable? Because keep in mind, when Shad bought the team, the rumors of relocation were rampant.
Yeah.
The tarps were on the seats. He was not buying a team that was guaranteed to stay in Jacksonville. Yeah. But the first assignment was, what are those things we need to do to be able to solve that? And there were a handful of things. Yeah. Some of them, most of them, I think we've gotten close to. Some of them we haven't, which is a consistently competitive football team. Yeah. Okay, that obviously has to come. But on that list were things like downtown Jacksonville needs to be a vibrant community. Yes. Okay, not just because we want Jacksonville to do well, but a vibrant downtown will benefit the Jaguars. Okay. We also knew we had to get ahead of the stadium issue. Because teams that find themselves in problem situations had all of the same traits that we had: small market, low revenue, aging stadium with no solution, and a low revenue from a overall local revenue standpoint. Oh, I'm sorry, and a lease that was expiring that was going to keep them there. So those four, I know I repeated them all. Those four things, and so we started the dialogue on the stadium. Keep in mind, we got a resolution in 2024. We started the dialogue in 2016.
Yeah, wow.
And, we went very slow. It was very deliberate. We didn't try to rush it. And there were times where it may have been easier to get it done from a political standpoint. But we weren't quite ready to do it. And we just didn't think it would be right to rush something, because we knew even if we would have been successful, at the end of the day, there would have been a lot of criticism as to it was a rigged process. Yeah, okay, so we went through it. Daniel, you were part of it too, and I've mentioned this, publicly, that when we were winding down our part of the process, we knew that it was going to end be ready to end in terms of all the work we were doing in June of 2023. Right. So there was an election in May of 2023. Right. Yeah. Okay. And
there was. You're
not familiar with that?
I didn't realize that.
But here's the important part of it. Shad and I met with Daniel.
Yeah.
Shad and I met with Donna, and we asked them both the same question. This stadium thing is going to be. We didn't time this because of the election, but what is your preference in terms of when you would want to deal with this? And Daniel said, I'll deal with it right away. Donna said the same thing. That was an important message to us, not about who was going to be the mayor or not the mayor, but it told us that people from different political points of view are united in terms of the stadium, in terms of the time to deal with it is now.
Yeah.
Politically, some people would have said, I'll deal with it at the beginning of my second term.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we got into it, our interests were aligned. Shad was committed to keeping the team in Jacksonville. The mayor and other elected officials understood how important the Jaguars were to Jacksonville. So we went in with our interest aligned. The mayor did a great job in terms of leading that process, taking advantage of, look, I'm new. I ran on getting this done. So, don't be trying to say that this is something that I didn't warn you I was going to deal with. And then Mike Weinstein was an incredibly good choice to represent the city in the negotiations. He and I got along really well. We had great conversations. We were respectful of each other's position. We did not try to embarrass each other publicly. We did not try to carry the negotiations out through the press, much to the disappointment of the press.
Right.
And then as we got to an agreement with the city, Ron Salem did a great job. We had been spending a lot of time with each of the council members, so nothing came as a surprise. As you said earlier, we did a tremendous amount of community outreach over a course of a year and a half. So Ron did an exceptional job of getting it right over the finish line. There were a few open issues that Randy White stepped in and got it done. And so, I think we ended up in a spot where we met our objective that if the only result of this is a shiny new stadium for the Jaguars, then we would have missed a tremendous opportunity.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then to come out of this with the unbelievably comprehensive community benefits agreement, the first of its kind in terms of its size and the impact that that's going to create, not only in the short term, but long term throughout the 30 years of our lease, is going to be one of the many things that can help this entire community realize its full potential.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you, why that's important to Shad, to make sure that you're giving into the community like you are? Because I noticed, and we don't have to jump to this, but I noticed it here for Jacksonville, but also in London. That's the thing that surprised me when I got to see what was happening over there, is how invested y'all are in the community over there as well. Yeah. Why is that such an important thing to the leadership of the Jaguars?
Well, that's Shad. Shad believes that, we take a tremendous amount out of this community. We benefit from the emotional connection, the financial investment that citizens in this community make in the organization. The NFL creates a tremendous platform, and Shad is committed to using that platform to benefit this community. He wants us to be an exceptional corporate citizen to make things better in this community, and that's who he is as a person. But if you look at it just from a business perspective, that's good for us too.
Yeah.
And it's not like, Shad, created that. Shad stepped it up significantly, but that's always been a part of the Jaguars' DNA going back to Wayne and DeLars Weaver, where being an active part of the community, giving back to the community, making a difference in the community is part of the Jaguars' DNA. And, Shad understood that when he acquired the team. And, fortunately, he's been in a position where, we could make even more significant commitments from the Jaguars into the community.
I was thinking about the night of the vote at City Council. Interesting story. I was sitting in the City Council chambers, and you were sitting in front of me. I was in the back, and the mayor's chief of staff came up and said, "Hey, Daniel, mayor wants to see you in the green room." Got up and walked out, and City Council hadn't taken their seats yet. And I walked back there. "Mayor, how's it going?" "Great." She said, would you mind sitting with me on the front row for this vote? And I was like, "I'd be honored to, Mayor." And we walked out sat on the front row for that vote without saying anything, but I think it said 1,000 words that this is what Jacksonville's about. You know, you have a political battle, the dust settles, everybody get up and let's pull the rope in the same direction. And that was a great night. We kind of knew where the votes were landing because we, you know, I talked to a bunch of council members, but I just remember that. And I think the whole community came together when we needed it to.
Well, I think we also sometimes focus so much on that minority group of issues that may separate us, and we ignore the majority of things that we absolutely agree upon.
Right.
And I think the Jaguars being in downtown Jacksonville, the ability to invest in underserved neighborhoods where that investment has been waiting for far too long, those are all things we agree on.
We all agree on that. Yeah.
You know, so let's just, to the degree we can focus on those things and get those things done, you know, we're collectively going to be able to do wonderful things.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, time is flying by in this conversation, and I want to make sure we get to some really important issues for the community. Four Seasons is coming out of the ground. The office building's coming out of the ground. I know there were lots of hurdles as we head into construction. Anything you build on the river is going to have issues. Talk us through what the community can expect. I think this luxury option and hotel opportunity is going to kickstart a lot of other hotel opportunities in downtown Jacksonville. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, what can the community expect? They can expect exactly what we've been showing them for the past few years.
And all of the people said, no, that's really not what's going to happen.
Anyway,
you hear that the whole way through and you're like, these guys are telling you this is what they're going to do. I don't understand it.
Well, sometimes the Holiday Inn operator in Orange Park can be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the Four Seasons did come to the Four Seasons came to Jackson only because Shad was going to be the owner.
Right.
So, you know, those projects are moving, you know, on schedule. The
Right.
office building actually just had a topping out ceremony last Friday. So that's coming really quick. The Four Seasons is not as far along, but it's multiple sizes bigger.
Yeah.
If you can get up and look over that fence, you'd be shocked how much work is going on there. So, you know, they remain on schedule. I'd like to tell you they remain on budget, but they're not on budget. They're
Never happens, right?
significantly over budget, but those are the things,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you discover when you build on the river. The community benefits agreement and how all this ties together is important, because one of the things that we've looked at, all of us have looked at for far too long, is the promise of development on the North Bank and all the starts and stops. And that's why, particularly as it relates to this community benefits agreement, you know, Shad was prepared to make this commitment. He was also prepared to commit to another $100 million plus, a minimum of $100 million of investment on property next to the office building if the parks were funded.
Right.
And if the Riverwalk was completed. So one of the other great things coming out of the stadium deal is now we have certainty. There's funding in place to finish the North Bank parks, funding to finish the Riverwalk. And one of the things that was important to us, and the city will agree with 100% with what I'm about to say. The city does a great job in making parkland available.
Right.
They don't do a great job of maintaining those parks once they're open.
It just doesn't work with city government.
So we were concerned about, it goes back to the original Four Seasons deal. We were concerned about Met Park, and is Met Park going to be well maintained? So what we agreed to do as part of the Four Seasons was pay for the maintenance of Met Park for the first 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay? And then with the rest of the riverfront parks, we did the same thing through the community benefits agreement. So now you're going to finish these parks, and out of the Jaguars contribution, $1 million a year is going to be earmarked for maintenance of the North Bank riverfront parks.
Yeah.
So all this stuff is finally coming together. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's not like we have to fight a lot of political battles to get it to the point where it's going to happen. So we have no hesitation in showing people, here's what's going to happen on the North Bank of the St. Johns River. Here's how it ties into what's happening at the stadium. Here's the Four Seasons in the office building. And, you know, those are all the ancillary benefits that go well beyond just a shiny, renovated, city-owned stadium.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited about the marina. The fact that people that love to take their boats out on the St. Johns River are going to have a place to come and and enjoy some sushi or whatever
Right.
it would be, and a beer, and then head back to the house. And I think it's going to be an incredible kickstart to downtown. You're going to have Mosh in the same area, the parks activated, super, super exciting. And I can't wait to see it finalized. Yeah, cannot wait.
It's going to be a significant game changer, that's for sure. And keep in mind, the great things that are happening downtown isn't limited to things that SHOT is funding.
Sure.
Okay, there are dozens of efforts. Gateway Jags is a good example. The example that all the investment in Brooklyn provided to all of us that, hey, you can get things going really well in a community. The decision that University of Florida made in terms of the downtown campus. The Rise Corporation, who I don't think they get enough credit, they were really the first pioneers to go into the sports complex and build the apartment building, which unfortunately burned down right across the street here. Yeah. But if you look across the street here, they're rebuilding it, which is a great thing. So this is, I think we've talked a lot about at multiple times over the last 10 years. We're reaching a tipping point. We're reaching a tip. We never got to the tipping point, but I truly think today that we have now crossed over that hill, and we've got huge downwinds, and there's great things that can happen in downtown, and there's momentum.
I totally agree, and I think everybody's super excited about it. We're tight on time. We're coming in, bringing this thing in for a landing, and one of the things that we want to hear from you, you've had some pretty incredible jobs, okay? Listening to your path, your story is just incredible, and I think it's a lot for people to be able to strive for. But we've all had the worst job that we've ever had growing up, and I can think exactly right now which one is my worst job. So what would be your top worst job that you've ever had?
You gave me this heads up, and I appreciated it. And I've been thinking about it. And again, like I said, I've been incredibly fortunate. I have had no bad jobs in my adult life. Okay? So
I would say the same thing.
Every job I've had, every full-time job I've had were great jobs. The worst job I ever had was when I was in high school. And I would get out of high school, I would get out of class, I'd have practice or something like that. And there was a small sheet metal fabricating shop that was close to where I went to high school. And I would go there at 6 o'clock, and you'd go through this, and they fabricated, a lot of air conditioning type vents and things like that. So you went in there and you had these incredible number of scrap little pieces of sheet metal all over the place. And you'd have to pick them all up, clean them because they were recycling it. And that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the tremendous number of cuts you'd have on your hands when you went through the process. So you know what? I'm sure I could have come up with something much more creative. No, I assume you wanted something accurate, but no, that's that was probably it. And I'm sure others have had a lot worse jobs than that.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to think back on the worst jobs that you've had. Yeah. And I think the worst jobs that you've had always help you go, hold on a second, I'm not spending the rest of my career doing this. And so
that's true.
We're pretty excited that you graduated from the sheet metal
cleanup
career and graduated onto the sports and entertainment world, because it means a lot to us in Jacksonville.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I wondered, just one last question for you. Obviously, you've had some great teams around you as you've accomplished all these amazing things in St. Louis and New York, now here in Jacksonville, as it relates to the stadiums and development. Is there something like a skill set that you possess that you would attribute that success to, that you see has benefited you over and over again in the process that you've gone through?
Well, that's something that I've really improved over the years. Well, first, it starts with a good sense of self-awareness. And, when I was young, I always thought, I can do this better than anybody. Mm-hmm. And if I don't do it, it's not going to get done right. No. So I was sleeping at the office. I wasn't delegating. I was getting the stuff done, but it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my family. So once you can realize that you're only going to achieve as much as those people around you are going to enable you to achieve. And if you begin to think about, people really want to believe that they're making an impact and that they're appreciated and that they're valued. And a big piece of that is you willing to trust them.
Mm.
Okay. And, so that's important. And then, the last piece was, and I think so many times people of my generation, when they would say, what are you going to do to build a great team? Well, I'm going to find people smarter than me, and I'm going to find people that are willing to work really, really hard. So I want the best, and I want them to work really, really hard. Okay. And that's not to suggest that really smart, hardworking people aren't important in every organization. The reality is those are the easiest people in the world to identify because they self-identify themselves.
Yeah.
You look at their academic record. You look at what happens after they get out of school. Do they get promotions? Do they advance? But at the end of the day, for an organization to be really successful, you have to have leaders that are going to look at it and say, and actually believe that if I help this company be successful, I'm going to get the things that are important to me.
Yeah.
And what's important to one person, it may not be the same thing to somebody else. Certainly today with younger employees.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, compensation is important. Career path is important. Development opportunities are important. But there's a lot of other things. Do I feel proud working for this company? When I tell my friends and neighbors, this is the company I work for, do they say, yeah, that's a great community partner? Do they have the same values as I might have? Mm. Are they willing to invest in me?
Yeah.
And what's critically important, and we've seen it even more so post-COVID, is am I going to be able to have the proper work-life balance?
Sure.
And we see that. And I think from my perspective, you realize these things over time. Unless you're given an opportunity to manage people, you really don't know how good of a manager you're going to be. You don't have to have managed people in the past to be a great manager, okay? And just because you manage people doesn't make you a great manager. But as you get into this process, and you realize, the things that will be most fulfilling will be seeing somebody who works for me, or somebody who works for someone who works for me, be happy at home, or buy their first house, or have their first child. Because at the end of the day, these are jobs. These aren't your life. And we work to be able to do those things that are more important to us than our jobs.
Yeah,
and to the degree you can synthesize all that into a culture and a management style, then you have a chance to be successful.
And we try to create that family atmosphere at the chamber. And I think that that's incredibly important to the folks that do want that work-life balance. They want to work hard, but life is way more important. I want your family to be healthy, because if you are healthy at home, you're going to be so much more productive at the office. And I've watched you since you came to Jacksonville, and sometimes you didn't know that I was watching. And I would tell you, T, one of the things
that's what TK told me one time too.
Yeah. you don't need TK and his detectives watching, but I remember watching Mark when he first came to town at different events, and just being personable with people. And he didn't have to. Like, I've seen him walk down the aisle of a bus and shake everybody's hand on the bus and almost know everybody's name. He walked up to Rebecca and me the first time I was with him, and he said, "Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Daniel." And we were like, wow, this guy's different. And I think that we all see a little taste of that today.
Yeah.
I love the example you set with your family and with Cheryl. She's as sweet as they come. And I love the fact that you're in Jacksonville, and I love the fact that you care about the community and that you care about us as people. And we need to go out there and make Jacksonville the greatest community in the country, and the Jaguars the best team in the NFL. And I just wanted to let you know how honored I am that you would come in today and talk to us and share a little bit of the wisdom and your career. And I'm super excited about the next 10 years.
I appreciate that. And I'm very, very fortunate, and this community is fortunate that Shad Khan and his family have created the platform that we can make a difference.
Totally agree. Thank you very much for coming on the first Speakeasy Jags.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Hope it doesn't get canceled after one episode.
I don't think it will.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
You've seen the shirts, now hear the story. 8103 Clothing was born from heartbreak, built with passion, and designed to make an impact. The name honors a loved one lost too soon, a brother whose memory lives on in every stitch, every design, every drop. For the past 7 years, 8103 Clothing has partnered with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp to release throwback tees and viral designs, unique merch like the Jag Shrimp t-shirt that I have and wear often. And yes, they're officially licensed to use all the classic Jacksonville Suns logos as well. But 8103 is more than a brand. It's a movement. Backed by over 2 decades in the event space, founder Mark Braddock started with a 10-vendor pop-up. That vision evolved into the 904 pop-up, now Jacksonville's largest curated market, featuring over 200 vendors and generating more than 1 million impressions each month. This is about more than fashion. It's about building community, repping local, and keeping small business culture front and center. Rooted in Jacksonville Beach for over 22 years, yet they're just getting started. 8103 Clothing, resilience, community, legacy, keeping the memory alive.
Thanks for tuning in to Speakeasy Jags. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow us on our social media platforms, share it with a friend, and make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.